Last week, New South Wales residents were advised not to use appliances lest the state ran out of electricity. Well, this week it was South Australia's turn, with their energy minister telling people that the state risked blackout unless they bought 2 diesel-powered generators, which had been mothballed in July because we're going renewables, out of storage and got them operational again. South Australia relies a lot on renewables and needs New South Wales and Victoria to provide power in the event that South Australia's renewables don't, renew. And so the Energy Minister said we have to make sure when we need the power is there, because if it's not across the national energy market, I can guarantee the Premiers of New South Wales and Victoria aren't going to be saying, let's load share here to provide South Australia with power. But it gets even worse than that. Today, the energy market operator has demanded the power to shut down solar across the entire country on days when an oversupply of solar threatens to destabilise the grid. The Australian energy market operator said the ever-growing output from solar was posing an increasing threat to the safety and security of the grid because it was pushing out all other forms of generation that were needed to help keep the system stable. So what we've got across the country is now absolute madness. We used to have a first world power grid, but we're dismantling that and replacing it with a third world power grid. And even if we're successful, Caleb and Liz, to get net zero, it will make absolutely zero difference to global temperatures, to rising sea levels and the amount of snow that falls on Kosciuszko. All we're doing is guaranteeing higher electricity prices. We're guaranteeing business will flee this country. And for what? For absolutely no net benefit.
As I wrote in my advertiser column on Friday, I hate to say I told you so, because of course this does mean that there are people out there who are making decisions about whether or not they buy their children Christmas presents this year or they pay their power bills. But I told you so. What we have here is an energy system that has been rushed and is not built for the grid that we have. In South Australia, as you said, they want to bring the Port Lincoln and Snuggery diesel-powered generators back online, which Engie took offline in June or July because they said they weren't financially viable anymore because of renewable energy. Well, who cares what's financially viable?
We need power.
What about what's viable in terms of keeping the lights on, for heaven's sake? But of course, that's not the fault of the energy companies. They only want to turn a buck, and that's what their shareholders want them to do. So they're just simply operating in the market that these governments have created for them. And then the governments come along and say, oh, hang on a minute, we've got a small problem here. And how absurd that we would now be told that we have to turn off your solar panels, which we encourage you to put on your roof so that we could have a renewable future, because getting too much, we've literally got too much renewable energy in this country and it's going to fry the grid. Is that just not the height of insanity? And of course, in New South Wales earlier this year, Ausgrid announced that they would introduce a surcharge for you to feed your solar power back into the grid for exactly this reason. Lots of power, solar power, gets fed into the grid off of people's rooftops in the middle of the day when they're all at work and that energy is not being used, and they'd much rather they fed it in the evening when everyone's at home. Well, the sun doesn't shine in the evening, does it? So they're actually going to make you pay to put your power back into the grid because you were encouraged by successive governments to do so because it'll fry the network. If anything proves that we have gone too fast on this, that is it.
The government even subsidised solar panels. That's how hard they pushed it. Everyone with solar panels out there, you must be so angry. I know that I would be absolutely fuming. You did the right thing. You forked out for your solar panels from China. China's very grateful for your donation. And now we're being slapped on the wrist, made to pay, basically penalised for doing the exact thing that the government wouldn't shut up about encouraging you to do for years and years on end. I bet you South Australia's really sorry that they shut down their last coal-fired power station in 2016 because they don't even have that to fall back on like we do in some of the eastern states, where again, we've got the government saying, oh, actually coal-fired power stations, can you stay open for a bit longer? Because our whole green dream is proving less feasible by the day, and we need you guys online. Otherwise, we too will have rolling blackouts like we're in India. I have travelled extensively throughout Asia, where rolling blackouts are just a thing. You never know any given day, any time, whether you're actually going to have any electricity. It's a bit fun because it just adds to, I'm in a foreign country, how exciting. Here in Australia, not fun. You want certainty when you flick on a light switch or try to turn on your aircon on a steaming hot day. This isn't sustainable, but how many energy suppliers have we had say this? In the past couple of years, they are the ones who have been screaming at the government saying, yes, like you say, Caleb, we're operating in the market that you've created, but this is going to mean less power, which is going to mean higher prices and potentially no power on occasion.
It's funny what you're saying about travelling through Asia. I remember being 19 years old in the Philippines and they would have daily brownouts, they called them. I remember thinking, man, what sort of a country is this? It was kind of exciting, but you just don't want that excitement in Australia, especially not in summer, God forbid. What'll be interesting, though, is a lot of people bought solar panels, 9, 10 years ago when the government was offering extraordinary subsidies. As those solar panels start to fail and need replacing, and if now, of course, those subsidies aren't quite so generous, will people be motivated to fork out the money and replace them? And let alone the question of where those old solar panels end up, because that's going to be a massive problem. There's 4 million solar panels on roofs around Australia. At some point in the near future, a lot of them are going to have to be replaced with little to no government subsidies. And where are we going to dump them?
Well, I chuckled a little bit to myself before when you mentioned the word sustainable, Liz, because, of course, we are told that this is sustainable energy, but, of course, it's so terribly sustainable that in order to make the whole thing work, we've got to fire up the diesel to keep the, clean and green diesel. Here we come. But, of course, the problem you described there, James, is a massive one, because there is theoretically no reason that rooftop solar should not be able to power much of the country, but you need to be able to store that energy when it's being generated. And of course, the cost of storing that energy right now is enormous. If you're a household, to put a battery on the side of your house costs a lot of money. To do it at a large level costs a lot of money, because it was the first thing South Australia did after they had that big power outage in 2016 or 2017. Was it? They got Elon Musk to go and build a big battery down there, but that can only power the state for about 20 minutes or something. But in order to make it work, you need that storage, but it costs too much, which once again just proves the point that we've gone too fast with renewable energy. There's no reason that at some point in the future renewable energy could actually be an economically viable form of energy, but we just haven't reached that point yet, and our grid isn't built for it. I mean, for goodness sake, remember, what was it, 9 years ago, Bjorn Lomborg tried to set up shop at the University of Western Australia, a man who simply says renewable energy is a good thing, but we should move to it in a way that is economically advantageous for people, the consumers. And he was drummed out of WA for saying that. If only we'd listened to him at the time, perhaps we'd be in a different position.